Our place, this place, your place. The outlook for New Bern's future is made possible by the generous support of the Craven County Community Foundation, an affiliate of the North Carolina Community Foundation, Carolina East Health System, and by the financial contributions of viewers like you.
Public service is the heart of our community, and it is a part of every citizen in this community, in New Bern and Craven County. Every person believes that they should be serving their fellow man. Well, our mission is to prepare our students for civic, professional, and personal success. We want every child who graduates from our school system to be ready for a really rapidly changing world, but also to take care of their fellow man, really to reflect what our community already provides to us. New Bern was the colonial capital of this state, the first capital, and that public service is in our DNA. And so our students have got to be graduates that are ready to continue to carry that torch, not just for our community, but for the democracy in our state and in our country.
Dr. Dallas Herring said many years ago, one of the founders of the community college system, and he said our role is to take students wherever they're at and go with them as far as they want to go. And that perfectly describes the mission of the community colleges in the state and Craven Community College.
We are student-driven, and what that means is we have a great diversity of students from the high school all the way through the non-traditional student. And our goal is to make sure that we meet them where they are and get them what they need.
If it wasn't for the program, I probably would have never became an engineer. Physically, for me, engineering, it's not always a desk job, but thank God maybe it is. And it's a well-paying job to where, as a disabled person, I support myself and family. You know, that's important to me just as it is anybody else, to be able to do that and not struggle.
You teach here at Craven Community College. These are not strangers. These are your neighbors. These are your friends. These are your co-workers. These are the folks you go to church. These are not folks from another state, another country. This is home. You really care about their success. And that's what makes a community college, and ours in particular, very, very special.
You know, when you give, you receive tenfold. And that is what this community is all about. And so that passion comes from that service that we receive, and hopefully from the service that we are given to our community. I hope folks feel that passion in how we serve our students.
All right, we're fortunate to have another panel of great leaders and great local experts to talk about this intersection between education and workforce development and skills and economic and community development. So I'm going to call each to the stage. First, Dr. Meghan Doyle, who has served as the superintendent of Craven County Schools since August 2016. She brings a great experience from the trenches as a teacher and as a middle school and high school principal and assistant county manager in Onslow County, and now fortunate, people here in Craven County, fortunate to have Meghan Doyle as the superintendent of Craven County Schools. Mark Meno, yes please, for superintendent. Mark Meno, who serves as the chief engineer at the Department of Navy's Fleet Readiness Center East in Havelock and Cherry Point. Mark, thank you for joining us today, great employer. And Dr. Ray Staats, who joined Craven Community College as the president and the 5th president of Craven Community College in 2015. I remember the day when the board selected Ray and thinking this is the perfect fit for Craven Community College. A 20-year career in the Air Force, I think it was 20 years, is that right, about that amount, and with the Community College of the Air Force, and then a previous background, and so what a remarkable fit for a great military community that we consider here in Craven County. And so thank you for joining us, and we'll get started. Mark, I'm going to start with you. I always like to start with the employer because you're the person there who is whose opinion really counts about the jobs we as educators are doing. And first I want to kind of set the stage and just talk a little bit about Fleet Readiness Center East, because I remember my first week here, and everybody, at that time we used to use the term depot. I don't know if it's still used depot term here, but now Fleet Readiness Center East. And I remember coming back after my first visit, just how much I had not and I remember saying over and over, you can't imagine what is at Fleet Readiness Center East until you actually go there and walk. It is one of the largest, most high-tech, high-wage employers in eastern North Carolina, and a lot of times people don't realize that, and you've been a major impact on this region as an employer. And so as one of this region's most important and significant employers, why is this issue of skills and workforce development and then education and the colleges working together, why is this so important? Why do you and your predecessor give so much time to this?
I thought you were starting with me because I was the only doctor not on the panel. So just a couple stats. It is the best kept secret for some reason in the county. The average payroll salary is $69,000 a year. The overall payroll of the facility is a little over $350 million. About half of that workforce lives within Craven County, and the other half come from literally hours away every day to come to work. So huge economic impact. That's where I think this discussion starts as it relates to why it's important to connect to the community. We've embarked on a lot of efforts that were alluded to a little bit earlier. In many ways, New Bern is also a little bit of a best kept secret. So when we go off to recruit a technical workforce, about 1,000 of those workforce, of the 4,000 that are employed there are engineers, but about 75% of that work is technical work. It's technical work that requires apprenticeship programs, 2-year degrees, certificates, and we'll get into some of that later. But specifically from an engineering perspective, if I go off to Georgia Tech, which is a fine engineering school, not as good as Virginia Tech, but a fine one nonetheless. A little preference there. And we bring them from the middle of Atlanta into eastern North Carolina. They're looking around for their sports team, their rock concerts, an escalator, really anything that they're familiar with. So there's nothing special about the kids who ultimately go to Georgia Tech. It's a good engineering school. If we can get a hold of a 3rd, 4th, 5th grader and convince them that a technical career path is an opportunity, they already love living here. Yes. Now that's a 10 dozen-year proposition before they pop out the other end in an apprenticeship program or certificate program or through internships, et cetera. But if we do that, which is when this started back in 2004-05 timeframe, now you've built a pipeline. You built a pipeline of employees. You may never have to go to Georgia Tech and recruit again. You've got everything you need right here.
Absolutely. I want to build on that, and Megan, turn to you. When I left this community, I kind of coined a phrase that I learned from here, which was really, I used to talk a lot about seamless education. Now the term really is pipeline in that regard. I'll give a shout out to a predecessor of yours who really taught me a lot. He's a quiet, unassuming guy, but Bill Rivenbark, who was superintendent, had a huge impact, I felt, in that regard. But I think as we talk about the notion of pipeline, then it's also important for us to think about in the context of the previous conversation. It doesn't just happen at the end point when they go through a particular program at Craven, or then it is a pipeline that starts in early childhood, and we have representatives of Smart Start and Partnership for Children and others that are here in the elementary schools. I saw my son's kindergarten teacher who had such an impact on him when he was younger here. But it starts early. It doesn't start at the end. So can you talk about it in the context of pipeline and why that pipeline is so important, and why then Craven County Schools are so vital and important to this issue of economic and community development?
Well, let me say I 100% agree that Georgia Tech does not have the bead on the most curious and inquisitive problem solvers. I think that we do. And our students in every community in Craven County have the capacity and the curiousness that our students need to be in these great jobs at FRC East. And I think the pipeline is very critical. You know, a student comes into kindergarten or even in their pre-K programs, they come into those programs and we're preparing them to be able to read and have those critical skills that are going to make them successful later on in life. But they've got to be able to keep hold of that curiousness, and a lot of it is play, problem solving. And the pipeline for us really is making sure that we don't allow that to be lost over that K-12 or K-16 pathway, but that we put the tools, sometimes the toys, in the hands of students early on, so they're constantly thinking about how their world can be shaped by them, and also how their world shapes them as well. We're really excited about a number of things that we're doing in Craven County Schools, but there's already some things here. And one of the biggest, I think, is the connection that we have with the community college in our early college high schools. We're very fortunate in this community to have two, one that's set in the New Bern area and then one that's set specifically in the Havelock area, and it has an engineering focus. All of our communities have very unique properties that are going to allow us to really feed students into the workforce in those either small regions of our county or into the greater county and in our region. Our job as a school system is to tap into that and to use the resources of our community, of which this group of people is particularly good at, to make sure that they have an impact on our students.
Before I turn to my friend Dr. Staats here, I want to ask you, I think I've often said being a public school superintendent may be the toughest education job, perhaps only second to middle school principal. You've been both. You can make that judgment. But I know you have a lot of sleepless nights, but you mentioned excitement and the things you're excited. What's the thing you're most excited about right now?
I'm really excited about the work that this community has done, actually. In the last 6 months, about 62 members of our community, many of which are sitting in this room, came together to create a vision for our school system. And that vision is some of the words I've already said to you, really thinking about making creative problem solvers, students who are innovative in their thinking, not just about their work, but their personal life, and most importantly, civic life. And I said in the piece that, this is the colonial capital. I really do believe that there's a really strong foundation of the democratic principles of our country in this community. And what better place for our community to come together to ask us what it is they need from our school system, and then for us to turn around and deliver back. And that's really what I'm excited about right now.
Ray, I'm going to turn to you. When I was here, I learned here something that I can't get out of my mind. I keep talking about is seamless education. See, and I think there's a unique role for community colleges. I mean, we're sort of the middle child of education, but I've also said we're the seam in seamless education. So it is, a unique role of connecting with public schools, connecting with our university partners, connecting with our employer partners. And when the seams are really tight, it's a beautiful thing. And I've never experienced tighter seams in that regard than I experienced here in Craven County. Can you talk about that and the specific relationship between the public schools, the community college, Fleet Readiness Center East, and other, major employers, technology-focused employers in this region that are giving great opportunity? Can you talk about that? Because a lot of times people don't realize how important those tight seams are and the role of the different institutions.
Well, you mentioned strategic partnerships. The college thrives in everything we do about the partnerships, and then you mentioned strategic neighbors. And I think I'd like to turn that just a little bit and talk about strategic vision. And I'll go back to your time at the college. In 2004, you committed the college to a partnership with NC State, knowing that wouldn't bear fruit for many years. First graduate would not come down through till 2012. And as of this year, we've now had 29 graduates that have come through, but there's 16 more in the pipeline. So a dozen or more years later, that partnership is just beginning to bear fruit. In 2007, the college did a strategic plan and identified the need for the STEM building in the early college. After 10 years, we are now actually going to start turning dirt and build that building today. That's going to take the program that we started 14 years ago and double it again. So everything we do has a partner involved. So we partner with the K-12 school system through Early College East and through some of our Career and College Promise programs. We move the students through our programs, partner with NC State. And then we're looking always at that back end, and I think you started this conversation in exactly the right place, because the end goal is to get them in to a job and a career that's going to be fruitful. But I think that strategic vision, and it's something since my arrival here, I've found that that's an uncommonly common characteristic of our community, is that ability to look forward and look backwards and see the connection. So starting in 2004, then moving ahead to Dr. Doyle's team, who is making strategic decisions about 5-year-olds that won't enter the college for another 10 years and won't begin working for FRC East for another 15 years. So but those decisions are being made for people entering the workforce that will all be retired before that comes to fruit. But that takes some real commitment and some real long-term vision. And the seamlessness is absolutely important, because in a 15-year timeline, if that seam breaks anywhere along the way,
we lose that student and they move somewhere else, and heaven forbid they go to Georgia Tech, and they don't come back. And that's very, very important. So we have to keep a close monitoring to make sure that we're constantly in that overlap, and the college is right in the middle, and it's a great place to be.
I can't help but when I see people who are here who are kind of the quiet leaders, and there's a guy sitting in the audience that I have to, he's got a bright red shirt on. His name's Bill Fortney, who came here as a plant manager with Master Brand 20 years ago, but then he's been a guy who's a professor with NC State since that time, and it's people like him who, without those kind of people here who are just the quiet leaders, I don't think these kind of programs would have taken place. And one other person I have to give a shout out to, we talked about Georgia Tech, but I'm going to give a big shout out to our colleagues at NC State. Louis Martin Vega, who is the Dean of College of Engineering at NC State, was a crucial element in this. And it's really about how people put down their institutional silos and see the bigger whole, see the bigger picture in that regard. And Mark, I think employers, I've worked with a lot of employers over the years, and there's different employer commitment to skill development, workforce, and there's some that see the long term, the slug, the persistence, the patience, wondering, is this going to pay off? There are others that just, they're wanting you to do the quick training program, put everybody on the bus, and they're going to take the top 10% of whoever shows up. But then there are others who, and I would put Fleet Readiness Center East in this, who almost create a culture of long-term sustained commitment, which years down the road, you see the results as you're seeing now. Can you talk about the culture of employer commitment to education, to skill development, to workforce development, why that's so important to leaders at your organization and other key employers in this region?
I think there's equate it maybe to sponsorship levels. The easiest way for a business to feel like they're participating is to write a check, right? To make a donation, to do some sort of philanthropic activity and walk away. That has an impact. There's nothing bad about that, but that's kind of level one sponsorship, if you will, from an employer perspective. It's really about recruiting and retention from our perspective. And additionally, a lot of our leadership team, of which I'm a part, have connections to education anyway, so a little bit of a passion. In my case, a wife that teaches, a mom who taught, a brother who teaches. So connecting to the education system is almost second nature anyway. But the real level you need to get to is skin in the game. You need to go from a business perspective. We do a poor job typically from an industry perspective and trying to define for the education system what they need to do, as opposed to going to the education system and saying, what do you need from us in order to create the pipeline and the pathway you're looking for. If it's professional development, we can do that. If it's tours, we can do that. If it's bringing real life activities into the classroom, we can do that. It's really a matter of us going into that environment and asking that question. Once you turn that around, the relationship changes. It's a little bit related to the last discussion about redevelopment, right? If you go in and say, I'm going to redevelop, well, what's wrong with me, right? So if the business goes into the education system, the employees don't look the way we need them to, change what you're doing, and then we walk away. That doesn't do the trick. The masters of education are in the classroom, the folks that know how to do it. We just need to go in and see where the gaps are, where the seams might be that we can help fill.
Can I add on to that?
Please do.
Mark is really good about telling us, make me tell you no. And I don't think he's found an equal in me, but he definitely has in the principal of Roger Bell New Tech Academy, which is in Havelock, who has taken him at his word and has begun rapid-fire requests to FRC East. That's really the culture that they've built for us, is to make them tell us no. And they're really opening their facility to us to learn about what it takes to be a great employee in those locations, and that really helps our teachers to understand how they should be changing their instruction. We're all the same way, right? We need to see it before we believe it can happen or to understand it. And so having our folks in those facilities, not just in FRC East, but FRC East is the greatest example, to see the type of work that our students are expected to do when they graduate, that is what is going to really help us to see our path forward.
Well, if you're an educator or a student, it's tough to hit the mark if you can't see the target.
Right.
And I think that's where the work of the employers is so important. Meghan, if I may continue with you, two-part question here. We talk so much, and particularly with high-tech employers like FRC East, about the importance of STEM. Can you talk about the importance of STEM? But then I'd also like for you to segue, and sometimes then we forget about other things because we talk so much about the importance of STEM. I serve a very high-tech community with some of the most high-tech employers in the country, and they will talk STEM, but they'll tell me, but you better also, we need you focused on writing skills and oral communication and problem solving, and that as much as STEM sometimes. So can you talk about the two parts in that regard, importance of STEM, but also what you're doing in other areas as well?
First, you should know I started out teaching physics and physical science, and so I see that connection very clearly. As a teacher, though, of physics and physical science, the first thing I learned was that my students needed to understand how to read my content. And if they couldn't read a physics textbook or they couldn't read the terminology in that book, then they were not going to be successful. In addition, if they could not communicate about the results of their experiments and the work they were doing in my classroom, then they were not able to share their knowledge with others. So essentially, it was dead on arrival. So you really can't talk about STEM without talking about the basic foundational skills of literacy. And if we are not doing a great job of ensuring that every student has those skills, then we really can't get to the true STEM careers. I also think that sometimes we misuse STEM as a word because we think that everything should be driven towards STEM. But quite frankly, our STEM jobs and the jobs that wouldn't necessarily be characterized as STEM are jobs that need, again, those creative problem solvers. And they need folks who have a very broad background of knowledge and skills that include not just the sciences but the arts and those subjects that really tap into that right side of our students' brains. Because students need to be able to sit in, work with teams, communicate with one another, and understand the communication that's coming from the rest of the folks in their group. So we've got a lot of work to do, I think, all over. But I also think that the workforce is changing rapidly. You know, we have moved from industrialized to, and we have service here, but we also have really become an information economy. And so students, and I've conveyed this to my staff, students can have access to information at the drop of a hat. All they have to do is find a browser, go into Google, and ask a question. The key is, are they able to use that information to do anything positive or to create a successful life for themselves? And that's what really STEM, those skills of being able to use technology, understand how to decipher what's true, what's not true, what the source of that information is, those are all skills that we've got to be teaching our students, and they go much beyond understanding the, you know, Newton's laws of motion. They really have
How about
other
carrying
skills.
that from to the employer perspective and community college educator perspective?
I was going to jump in anyway, so I appreciate that. This may sound weird coming from someone who's responsible for an engineering group, but I also believe we've misused the phrase STEM, and I would challenge those that are watching and in the audience here, when you think about that phrase, you're probably thinking about the kids who are going to take calculus in high school. That's probably the first thing that comes to mind, or something like that. That's my top students, or the students that are going to go on and be engineers. For all the right reasons, that phrase was built, I think, to try to move organization or move education, organizational focus to where the careers are coming. But I think in an attempt to be expanding, we've got a little bit exclusive with that phrase. And the problem we've got now is, while I said we have about 1,000 engineers at FRC East, I'm just speaking from that perspective, there's about 2,000 jobs that are technical jobs that are trade skill jobs that require an apprenticeship or a two-year certificate or some specialized training, aviation welders, avionics technicians, composite tool makers, things that involve high-level math and a lot of creativity, and that's why we call them artisans. It's very ornate and difficult work. The concern we have now is we may have taken those kids that showed that interest and they didn't jump into what was a STEM pipeline, and now they aren't there available. We've actually turned them away from a career that they might have gotten. That's where our hardest recruiting area is. It used to be engineers. Now it's high-level trade skill areas. And I'll use that to maybe to hand off here.
You know, that's the challenge, is we do provide education across the full spectrum. You know, $1.6 billion coming into Fleet Readiness Center East and the base to support the F-35, and many of those are skilled artisans and trades. And, you know, I'm a STEM major by background, but I think about the skill sets that those disciplines give you that go. Just think about someone that is going to do construction work. They have to read blueprints, they have to assemble part lists, they have to create a project timeline. Those are highly technical skill sets, even if they aren't an engineer. And then they have to go out and make that happen. You know, if you're working with a plumber, you want them to have the right part set. And those are skill sets that are developed over the course of a dozen or more years. And those are shorter-term courses, and they pay well. We talk about STEM and the amount of salaries that go in there, and I'm constantly reminded of a story of one of our automotive technicians that just graduated a couple years ago. He's now earning 6 figures. And it's because of those skill sets, but that's a complex thing. It's not the old gas, fire, water thing that you used to have in an engine 50 years ago. You're doing some high-tech stuff. And those toys that you talk about are the very toys that they're using today to accomplish a complex task.
Yeah, if I might weigh in, I think that what you just brought up, too often I think we either or. It's you either go down this path or that path. You either go to community college, you go to university. We do that kind of either or. And my favorite place when I was at Craven Community College, they knew if they couldn't find me to go look at the machine shop, because I was just fascinated by the machine shop and what that. I mean, those were computer programmers. I mean, they may not have been sitting at a desk; they were standing in front of a machine, but it was just fascinating. But still, we like to either or, and that creates dilemmas for us.
Dr. Doyle knows I'm an extreme fan of early college because I think it moves us away from an industrialized model of everyone from 9th, 10th to 11th, 12th, all working in lockstep. At an early college, and it's important for our partnership with STEM and workforce development, is if a 9th grade student is working on grade level for English, then they're in 9th grade English. But if they're ready to move to the next step, they walk across the sidewalk into a college classroom. But that's all one subject at a time. They may be at grade level on math, they may be at college level, but it allows them to individualize. And if they're ready and fascinated by the machine shop, then they go across to a different building and they do that. So the students have options, and beginning at 9th grade can begin to tailor their interest instead of sitting in a classroom kind of through an industrial line. It's a remarkable initiative, and I know you played a great part of that.
Well, and also, too, I mean, part of where this builds in, too, though, is that these opportunities about college classes start in high school. So if you come out of 8th grade and you're not aware of that, and that's why, the importance of middle school and elementary school and what those opportunities are so important that sometimes get missed. I'd like to segue on this conversation about early college because I think it's a shout out to the state of North Carolina. North Carolina has 1/3 of all the early colleges. North Carolina is a pioneer in this area. And beyond the impact on the students, something that I saw when I was here is how much it pulled us together as public schools, college, university, in this case with NC State and ECU participating, and the employers in a way that perhaps we just naturally would not have happened. I remember the first meeting between I give my friend Jim Davis, who's the economic developer here at that time, we pulled together me and the Economic Development Commission, the school board, the county commissioners, and the Craven board. And that, you saw this pulling together in a way that I think is unique here in Craven County. It didn't start with that, but I do think it's unique. So given that this is a statewide audience for a New Bern-focused and Craven County-focused conversation, what do you think is something that we collectively outside of this region can learn from what's happening here?
For me, obviously, I think I'm the newest of the three of us sitting up here to this community, although I have been a fan for the better part of my professional life. I really do think it is in the conversations. But it's very unique here in that I didn't have to start the conversation as the brand new superintendent of Craven County Schools. I had immediately tons of folks asking to talk to me. And so it really made my job much easier to start making those connections and to start moving quickly to impact our students, because everyone in this community is so ready to serve one another. And I've never experienced anything like it. I think that it really is a commitment to public service, that every person who's in a job, either in a regular employer or in retirement, working for local government, or in a business or industry in this community, everyone believes in serving one another. And that service above self is really what makes this place very, very special. And I think that it is why there's been such an acceleration of innovation in this area around some of these things, because everyone here is committed to serving, from our youngest students to our oldest citizens. And I think that really makes a huge difference.
I think when you plant those seeds for something innovative like the early colleges, what we have developed out of that by having that seamlessness is a richness in our education. I had a great privilege to sit in a history class. I think it was with a professor that you had hired some years back. And he was discussing the civil rights movement. And in the classroom was a 17-year-old early college student and a 70-year-old student, their peers. But one, it's theory. For the other one, he lived it. And for them as peers to be able to speak to each other and share those experiences in the classroom is a richness that you wouldn't have had without that innovation. And they bring that out into the community. And it is about that sharing and that commitment to serving a community that makes that difference.
We have the advantage a little bit. We have military leadership in our facility while it's largely a civilian command, and they're usually fairly late in their career commanding officers by the time they move in with us. So they've served in dozens of communities around the country, military communities that have a military basis, not unlike Craven County, if you use Cherry Point as the model example there. And without fail, each of them, as they come through and they spend 6 months as the executive officer, which is a fleet up process before they become commanding officer, the theme's always the same. They've never lived in a community as connected, from the employee to the military to the community support groups to the education system, as the one they live in Craven County. Without exception, that's what they say. And in a lot of us, we haven't been in all the places they've been. They are providing that legitimate feedback that there is something unique, there's a spirit that's unique that connects the employer all the way back through the education system and all the community support that's around it, that they have a high appreciation for.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think we haven't given enough due to what is a very important ingredient to this unique gumbo that we keep talking about, which is being a military community. Absolutely. And I think that, we talk about the privilege of serving, military base, Cherry Point, but when you also look at what that community does, what Fleet Readiness Center means for this region, what, having the people who move here, who live here, who many of them retire here, and to me, I think that may be the secret sauce in some of this. Can you talk about how it's unique? You've spent a career serving military communities and in the military. Can you talk a little bit about how that makes it unique from an education perspective?
Well, it presents some unique opportunities. We have a campus that's 2 blocks outside the gate, the Havelock campus, and the student profile is very, very different. You have students coming and going, families coming and going, very flexible schedules that are involved. If you can imagine, if you're in a 16-week course and you get deployed, that changes the formula just a little bit. We think about speed and agility for families who come in and start our programs, but know that they have a time limit before they need to move on to someplace else. It's a challenge. And then there's the skill sets to bring in. You mentioned that the commanding officers have been all over the country. I've lived in 11 states. What they provide when they come to a community like this is context. They can compare to all those other places they've been and draw some different conclusions about what they find. And you're right, what they found and what I found is that sense of connectedness, that sense of community and service that's really unique for just about anywhere around the country. It's a place where the audience is full of military members who retired and chose New Bern as the place to live because of what that offered. And it offers for those transitioning sailors and Marines a sense of continuity, because they leave the service, but they never really leave home, because Cherry Point is part of that home and New Bern is part of that home in Havelock. So there's that connectedness, and it's why we have such a large number of folks that have settled here permanently.
I think for us in the school system, it calls us to a higher level of service to the students. These are the children of folks who have been deployed multiple times, who have really endured significant challenges in their life. And they have come from numerous different educational systems across our country. For us, it is really beginning a conversation, not unlike the conversation about housing and economic development in the New Bern area, about what are they expecting when they get here from our system. And that conversation has been one that's been very fruitful for us and has led to already the beginnings of some innovative programming in terms of our schools in our Havelock area specifically, but it's starting to filter out to the rest of our community. Our military community is very supportive. They're adopting schools all across our county, but they're also pushing us to make sure that we provide the very best.
Push you to make you better.
That's right,
yeah.
Absolutely, for the very best for every single student we serve, not just our military students, but for every student walking into our classrooms every day. And we need that push, because it really is kind of our reminder of what the public contract we've made with our community to provide public education.
If I can, I'd like to we're going to wrap up before we do our table conversations. And as we talk, we started the last conversation talking about leadership. And as I hear you all talk, I keep having leadership come up in my mind, listening to your conversations. I know just being here, when I saw Letha Ricks publish my kid's first grade teacher. And then I also, when you talk about early colleges, I think about Dr. Annette Brown, who started the first early college here. And so this place has been rich with educational leadership. And you all are examples. And Mark, I know you're not an educator, but you're an educational leader, and we appreciate that. And so to close, being an educator, I have a lot of 4 a.m. mornings where I wake up and my eyes are, and I wish I could say I'm always thinking about the exciting challenge that awaits me, but oftentimes it's the challenge that's right in front of me. So, we're a community of supporters and helpers. What's the biggest challenge that causes you some sleepless nights right now? Who wants to go first?
I wake up in the morning, it's a blessing to have a team and be part of a team where your biggest challenge is, how do I turn somebody loose to implement that idea they had? So the 4 a.m. is, where am I going to marshal these resources to make this great idea come to reality?
And when you say resources, what's the biggest issue?
Finances, partnerships, going through the process. So to build a STEM building, 10 years, how do we go through that? To get a bond passed, to get a contractor, to go through that whole thing.
The speed of being responsive.
And trying to be agile enough for an emerging industry. The first F-35 is 4 years away. That seems like a long time, but it's tomorrow from an education perspective. And so we're already deep into those partnerships and marshaling those resources to make sure that when those aircraft arrive, that we have the folks ready to meet them.
Yeah, academic time does not tend to move as fast as economic time, and that's a challenge we're all working through. Meghan, what's...
I would say, we heard, again, in the previous segment, a quote or someone said that we've got to convince folks to invest. And so my sleepless nights are about how do we convince our community and our state to reinvigorate its investment in public education. We are the economic engine of this state and have led in this area for many, many years. And so really convincing our community, one, that we're providing an important service to our children and to our community, but also how are we going to invest in that to make sure that we can provide the resources to cut the principals like Michelle Lee Luce or Eleanor Patrick or Jerry Simmons or Jeff Murphy or Ashley Falkenberry to do the work they know they need to do in their buildings to connect their community to the important work of educating our children. That's my every night.
Mark, I think I'm going to give you I gave you the first comment. I think I'll give you the last comment too, because you've got a foot in both camps. I mean, you're an employer, but you've also been totally embedded in education. And I think that's, when we always talk about the funding issues, and that's always before us and those resources, but the intangible, invaluable investment of employers in time and just rolling up your sleeves, and that's something clearly you personally have shown, Fleet Readiness Center, other employers in this region. So that's helped this region get to a place, in my opinion, that others still strive for. So how does this region go to the next place where others will be looking to strive for that? What's going to be most important for this region to get to what is that next level?
Well, I think I alluded to it earlier, the patience of time, which I think Dr. Staats talked about a little bit too. A lot of these initiatives and things we've embarked upon started as early as 2004 and 5, but a lot of the good ideas have started in 2012, 2013. So the next level is going to be when that fourth grader we made a contact with at the Eastern Carolina Aviation Heritage Foundation Elementary Science Camp that went to Fortney's Middle School camp that went on. They pop out the other end and work here. Then I think we can almost take our hands off the wheel.
Yeah,
from Dr. Fortney's program, 93% of those folks have been employed in this county that have graduated out of there. And they're all still employed with maybe one exception in this county. So that seeing the other end of the pipeline, going to the next level, I think that's when we're going to get there. We'll be able to take our hands off the wheel and it's just going to run.
Well, let me just conclude by saying this region, this state is so fortunate to have you all as leaders. Appreciate what you're doing as someone who was involved years ago. It just makes your heart fill to see how much is being done now and how much you're taking it places that those of us who were here years ago couldn't have ever dreamed about. And so thank you for all that you're doing and for what this community is doing for the students of the future. I think you hit on something that we talked about in the first session, the first panel, is this is not work that just happens in 6 months. This is about sustained, persistent, patient, and challenging leadership. And thank you for the leadership, and thank you for what this community does in the leadership on education and workforce and skills. And so we're going to, you've been through one panel. This is the second. You know the routine now. There's different ways for you to give input. The first way is if you're not here today, or if you want to do it quietly, you can put forward a question or a comment through social media, the hashtag CaresNewBern, C-A-R-E-S Newbern, through Twitter, or come to the mic and please tell us who you are, and if you want to give your organizational affiliation or not, either way, but tell us who you are, what's your question, what's your comment, and we're fortunate to have these leaders to give us their perspective. So, Deborah, you probably have some that have already come through social media, so we'll start with you.
Yes, we have, and as you said, you all can participate from your tables, or you can come up to the microphone. We'd love to hear from you. This is an interactive conversation. We want to hear back from you. So please make your comments and questions known right now. We do have a tweet from Donna Garrett who asks, what about the students that are below average? How are you serving those students?
Good point.
And we have a second question. Service above self in every aspect of our community. There is a unique spirit in New Bern. But that's a really great question. What about the students that are below average? How are you serving those students?
At the community college, I'll go back to that Dallas Herring quote, and you know it well. We take students wherever we find them. So the first thing we're doing is find out where you are and then figure out where you want to go. We have students that start at the 3rd and 4th grade level. And you mentioned Mary Peterkin and Uptown. And we partner there to get those students up to 12th grade and ready to graduate. We also get valedictorians coming out of the high school. So it's wherever that student is at, and we look at those students one at a time and do an assessment of where they're at, where they want to go, and then we travel with them to that endpoint.
Beautiful thing about community college, just like public schools, we serve the top 100% of students, and I think we're very proud of that. Meghan?
I kind of, the question I have is, how do we define below average? I think that we, unfortunately, for a number of decades now, have defined students based on a single test score, and I don't know that that really characterizes the true value of and the worth of those students coming to us. I'm below average in many areas. I also like to think that I'm above average in some areas, and I think that our goal is to make sure that they have the skills to be successful in the area that they are above average in. And so there's numerous jobs in this community, numerous opportunities to create an amazing life. We've got to help our students tap into where they are above average and then connect them with the skills, which include those foundational reading, math, and writing skills to be able to create a place where they can work and thrive and provide for themselves and their family. That's our core mission. But I think the question really is, how are we making sure that we look at those schools or students where we've got students who need a little bit more help. And our goal as a school system is to make sure we're providing all of the resources and more to make sure that those students catch up with their reading and their math skills so that they are ready to take on these jobs. And also keep tapping into that creative spirit, because every one of those children came to us curious and ready to learn.
And that's also why you have to look at it as a pipeline, a continuation, not just steps along the way.
Yeah, we'll throw it out, because I'll quote Pastor Strayhorn, we do need to be careful with our language.
That's right.
That when you start with below average, that sends a very strong signal. I've met many so-called below average that are highly superior in a number of areas. And what we need to be focusing on is matching skill sets to desires to the jobs that are available. It's really a matching, not so much how do you deal with below average.
I see more great community leaders and old friends out here at the mic. Linda? Please introduce yourself and question.
Scott, it's good to see you. Scott got me involved with the Craven Community College. I'm still a board member and also a committee member with the Religious Community Services. And this is to address partnerships that you all have been discussing and the people who fall between the cracks. These would be the adults in the community. And through a program that is a collaboration between the college and RCS, there is a program called, it's the Employment Ready Boot Camp. And they take people who are chronically unemployed or recently incarcerated people, and they have an extensive week-long period where they put them through a Myers-Briggs, they evaluate their skill levels, and they teach them soft skills for taking resumes, interviewing, the things that would normally just get them turned away immediately before they even have a second and third chance. And then, depending on how they are evaluated, then they can go to the college and they can be placed in a potential job creating opportunity. They can go back and get a GED. A few of them can actually get placed into a college course. But here is an opportunity in this community where the people who normally would just kind of be left floating are picked up and dealt with through the partnerships that are already in place, but not necessarily connected in other communities.
Ray, you want to talk about that adult education, the importance of partnerships, those second chances in many cases?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that characterizes our students is life is happening while they're in school. You know, when you go to a university, you get in a dorm room, you leave home, you kind of go on pause for 4 years and you worry about school. Our students' life has happened to them and life is happening around them. And our mission in the college is mostly in our educational programs, but that isn't enough for those wraparound students, for the students that need to learn life skills, for students who need housing, for students that need transportation. And the way we make that happen is through the partnerships with RCS that provides services, and the list goes on and on. In fact, Tyler, when you were speaking about the 28, I believe, folks that received Community Foundation grants, over half of those participants talked about their partnerships with the college. And I think that's what that's about. And it's because life is happening with our students. And so they all need bits and pieces to help them get through the educational process that the college on its own wouldn't be able to do. And so we rely on those partnerships to provide that wraparound support that helps them deal with life as it happens in the middle of their studies.
In that question, I can't help but and make the connection between the two panels. Think about, we didn't talk about as much in the first panel, but that workforce education piece was always a fundamental part of that. When I saw Mary Peterkin yesterday, she immediately was telling me about a new workforce partnership initiative, and that's always been a core part, which I think is important in knitting all of this together. See Bob Maddox. Bob?
Are you ready for me? I was listening to my director over here.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, and I got distracted. I just wanted to share. We've got quite a few comments to share. Is it possible that we can hear all of the comments and then get response?
Sure.
So that we don't run out. Okay. Please, go right ahead.
Mine is a question. And Dr. Doyle touched on it earlier when you were talking about the STEM situation, how it's important for communications and how it's important for, and I observed this when I was on the Board of Transportation. You had engineers that really had a hard time communicating. But I'll go back to my main question is referring to, when I was at NC State, it was one-on-one learning. I actually listened to the classroom, went home, studied by myself. And now you go up to NC State, as you all know, you go up to the Hunt Library, you go up in those places, it's team learning. They're in cubicles, they're writing on the side of the walls and all of that, and they're communicating, which I think is wonderful. I do have a worry about communications, even with my own grandchildren. I mean, you can't get them to pick their head up out of an iPad. Somebody even, I think, one of the writers in the newspaper said that he had a renewed feeling about young people. He went in a restaurant, and they four of them had their heads bowed down, and he said, well, they're saying a blessing. Well, in fact, they were looking at their iPads or they were looking at their iPhones.
You might try texting them. That might work.
I guess my question is, from the school level, from the high school level, from K through 12, from the community college, what are you doing about team learning and communication?
All right, what we're going to do then is we're going to get all the comments. We're going to try this and see if you guys think on your feet. We're going to call this the capstone in education terms. So you get to give a capstone commentary once all the questions and comments come through. Yes.
Good morning. I'm April King, and I'm with the Craven Literacy Council, and we are another option in the community where we work with adults that are, I guess, below average, as someone maybe put it, but there are like 19,000 adults in our community, Craven Jones and Pamlico County, who read at a 3rd grade level or below. And so we provide some one-on-one attention. We do have a partnership with the Basic Skills Program at the community college, helping provide some tutors for those that need some one-on-one attention. But the other thing that I would like to say is, along with the schools, a lot of our adults come to us because they want to help their children with their homework. And as you know, the greatest indicator of a child's future academic success is the literacy level of the parent, of the mother. And so that's another way I feel like that we're helping provide to helping the young student, because when you help that parent, that's motivating that student to work as well. But thank you all very much for, for being here and having this discussion. But I just had to give a plug for the Literacy Council as well.
It's great work that the Literacy Council does. Thank you, April, for bringing that forward.
Well, of course, you know why I'm here, right? I'm going to talk about the birth of 5. I heard Dr. Ralls mention the early years, and I was back there going, I also want to ask you to think about, I heard someone say, how can we teach these children or provide these children soft skills, right? So think about the possibility that those skills could be learned early on, 0 to 5. And during that time, 0 to 5, children's curiosity and desire to learn can be ignited to such a level that it will carry throughout their lifetime. It's a critical period of life. Lots of folks think, well, my children are all grown up, or they learn that in school. But research has proven that the most critical time for children to learn is the first 5 years. And we don't want to miss that. I also heard someone say, in order for change to be sustainable, it has to begin, it would take a generation. Remember that? Well, you've got the generation to work with in the moment. All the things that I heard you say that you would like to see come about. Isn't that wonderful? So as with anything that we're working on, we have to start at the beginning. If you start in the middle to get to the end, you've missed a whole component. Does that make sense?
Pipeline. Deborah, any last comments that we...
We do have another. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you also for, I'm excited about the Cradle to Job Partnership. And
now, if you got your name, you got to tell us your name. I know who you are. But
Bernard George.
Yeah, thank you, Bernard.
All right, I'm retired, and I'm a volunteer here in the city. But I'm concerned about America's competitive edge in the world, on the world stage. It's important that we develop all of our human capital. And since the segregation, we've lost a lot of that momentum through the segregation. Now, I'm asking now, what can we do to focus more on African American students, who the lady just said, it takes a generation. Well, we're 7 generations removed from slavery, and we find that we are pretty much in as a precarious situation as we've ever been, as far as education, as far as, and we're going to talk about that later on this evening, the school to prison pipeline, et cetera. But we talk about STEM and the success that it promises. Do we have any special initiatives for African American students? Just think about it. Thank you.
Deborah,
Yes, I'll be glad to share. We have another, that's a very good question. Lots of great comments coming from the microphone. And we have another tweet that came from Alderman Jamisha Harris, who says, great cookie cutter conversation on education, but let's get real. We need to do a better job hiring a diverse group of teachers that represent the demographics of Craven County. So, like I said, there have been lots of great comments and questions, so if you all have time to address these, fantastic. And we're still taking your comments via Twitter using the hashtag CaresNewBern. Join the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you. So challenge here for these educational leaders, bring us home on the last comments.
I'll start.
Okay.
First, let me address the issue about making sure that our African American students get the very best education that they can get. And I think the tweet was the one that said "get real" was probably one of the most important strategies that we can employ in our school system. If you look across our school leadership in Craven County Schools, we have a very diverse set of principals. Where we are struggling in Craven County is recruiting that same diverse workforce for our teacher force. We really need to make sure that our teachers represent the students that are in that building. And that is really one of the most key strategies that we can use to make sure that students see themselves in professional careers. And there's a great deal of research that says that a student, especially a male student, in the elementary grades, if they will have one African American male, which is a very difficult candidate to find for us, but it's one we are looking for, teacher, then that is going to make a significant difference, not just for that school year, but for the rest of their educational career. So there is a great deal of emphasis, and I can tell you that my board on a monthly, daily, weekly basis pushes me on that issue, and it's something that we are working on feverishly. To go to the device question, I would say that that is a challenge for us all. I think all of us are in here trying to engage with this conversation using social media, using Twitter, and using our devices. So there's strength and there's a community that we can build there. But we have got to convince our students, and this is something that we're committed to put those devices down when it's appropriate and to engage with one another as human beings, as individuals, and to learn about each other from our faces and from our facial expressions, our body language, and the words that are coming out of our mouth, not just what's coming out of our devices. And in our civic success aspect of our vision, that is a key component in ensuring that the devices that students have are a tool for them, but they are not the way that they see the entire world.
Putting my device down and asking Mark any final comments.
So just rapid fire around to Mr. Maddox's comments. Team learning environment. The education system does what they can, but the workplace team environment does not look like the education team environment. Yet. So I think that the things I see moving in that direction probably answer Mr. Maddox's question long term. We'll have to wait that out and see how that goes. To Ms. April's comment on literacy of parents, so I'd like to make a comment on the back of that, and that's really awareness of opportunities for employment with the parents. So the parents really only know typically the scope of what they see in their employment. So if that's why we have multi-generation people working at FRC East, because they know that. So awareness as much as literacy, that wasn't exactly the question, but I answered it that way. And Mr. Bernard's comment on African American students, or in that comment in general. So what we do with our outreach, whether it's coaching or robotics teams or whatever, is we match our coaches to the demographics of that school as best we can. So we have started recruiting at historically black colleges and universities, which is not something we used to do before, to try to increase our presence and then take those young engineers and make them a robotics coach in a school that has a demographic that's similar. It's a little bit to Dr. Doyle's point, seeing someone that's made it through to a career sometimes pulls that next student or student after that through to the career. So.
Right, quick final word.
And to address Mr. George's comments, I'll make a shout out to several programs the college has. The Craven Pamlico Reentry Council Partnership, which is reintegrating folks that are on the back end of that pipeline that you spoke of. Our TRIO program, which is an intrusive intervention program to help students succeed before they reach failure points. And then our minority male mentoring program to help students who are experiencing college for the very first time mentor through some of the folks that have been successful in that. And one of the questions Mr. Maddox asked was about that team environment. I think our challenge is to be evolving constantly of a changing demographic of the way our students think and what their needs are. You know, all of us as educators are providing educations that is not the same as what we received. When I took my first shop class 35 years ago, we went straight to the machines because my instructor assumed I knew how to use a screwdriver. Today, we have to start by telling students what a Phillips head screwdriver looks like. Very different way of looking at the world. Our students today multitask tremendously well, whereas we stood in a classroom in a static place. But the challenge is, if they're going to multitask, that means you better get their attention quick and get the message across because they're moving on to the next task. So that's a big challenge for us, is constantly evolving to meet those demographics, whether they be minority or generational.
Our place, this place, your place. The outlook for New Bern's future is made possible by the generous support of the Craven County Community Foundation, an affiliate of the North Carolina Community Foundation, Carolina East Health System, and by the financial contributions of viewers like you.